Good afternoon. My name is LJ Edmonds, and I'm your Vice Provost for Global Affairs, and I am the Director of the Center for International Studies. It is indeed our pleasure to host our second alumni event, where this is our unique opportunity to invite alumni from the Center for International Studies to speak to their career and some of the lessons that they've learned. And today we're going to have as our moderator Dr. Lawrence Wood, who is the Director of the Communication and Development Studies Program of the Center for International Studies. But before I invite him up, I just want to place this a little bit in context, because as many of our students know, you all want a job at the end of this day. And so we see these events as really important opportunities to capture the stories of our alumni so that we can showcase them in different venues. One is a public venue, but we're also taping today's session so we can use this material in the future. But it's also International Education Week. And this event being held during this week is also a really important opportunity to showcase in our campus the really critical role and high-profile role of the Center for International Studies through the leadership of their alumni and through our partnership with all of the different stakeholders in IEW. So it's really nice that we're able to host this during this week, because it then gets a lot of cachet in a number of different venues to remind everybody of the history of the Center for International Studies and what a big role it has played to the pan-university globalization strategies. So it really is a delightful opportunity for me to be able to have this event during this week. So on that happy event, may I invite Dr. Lawrence Wood to moderate our session today. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. I'm looking forward to what should be a very interesting panel session. We've got a real diversity of experiences and job profiles here today, and bringing that all together should provide a range of things to think about. I will first introduce the keynote speaker, Dr. Patrick Murphy. He's currently the Associate Dean for Research and Graduate Studies at Temple University and is an Associate Professor in the Department of Media Studies and Production there. He's got a range of academic as well as international experience, a lot of which is interrelated. He's done some research in Mexico. He had a Fulbright in Mexico, and he'll have various thoughts to share about his own experience here in a minute. His teaching and research interests include a range of things, including global media studies, media and the environment, and he recently published a book just this year titled The Media Commons: Globalization and Environmental Discourses. He's published a number of other books, as well as a vast range of academic journal articles and book chapters and various other types of publications. So I'd like to introduce Patrick. He's a great guy. I've known him for a while. He's very interesting, and no reason for me to go on when he's here to be the keynote. So thank you.
Thank you very much. As a media person, I got to get the microphone part right. It's amazing how many of us communication scholars continually miss microphones in these things. I want to thank Dr. Wood for the very kind introduction. It's always wonderful to come home to Ohio University, particularly this time of year, and to be here at OU as part of International Education Week. And I do want to thank the Center for International Studies for the invitation to be part of this event. As Woody said, my name is Patrick Murphy. I feel like I'm at a 10 steps, and I am a proud holder of 2 degrees from Ohio University. One is a master's degree, or a Maya degree, in development communication. The other is a PhD, back in the old day called telecommunications, but a PhD in communication. And class of 1990 for the MA, one of, I think, the second class of the master's program, actually. I think Vibrant Cambridge was the first. So he was a class of 1. We were a class, I think, of 4, something like that. And one of the things that happened here for me is what I guess I would call taking the international turn. That is, being in a place, in a context, a setting where just having people from all over the world, in addition to the education I received, in addition to the classroom experience, helped foster the kind of thinking that was vital in pushing me in the directions that I ended up pursuing. Today, I am tasked with trying to provide some insight in what a global professional should do in today's world. And I think that's a pretty tricky topic. Certainly not one that one person can define. And I think in large part because it's very complex. The terrain is shifting. The world has become exceptionally dynamic. So I'm delighted to know this is a panel because we'll be able to sort of tease that out and stretch it and explore it and hopefully come up with some maybe concrete ideas and recommendations in terms of what aspiring global professionals might do or continue to do. I imagine many of you are already on that path as well. So in that spirit, what I'd like to do is offer 5 starting points, just to seed some things that I think that, drawing from my own experience as an academic, someone whose primary interest in research is global media, but also someone who remembers my own path, my own journey as a student, as a scholar, as just a human being on planet Earth, trying to make sense of this crazy place that's going in some wonderful but also scary directions. So let me begin with the first one. The first one is study at Ohio University. And if you're here, you're already doing that. So step 1, you can sort of cross off the list, Murphy's list of what to do. This is really an interesting space because on the one hand, it's a small town on the edge of Appalachia, or you could say it's a small town in Appalachia on the edge of the Midwest, depending on how you sort of look at which direction you're coming from. And, but it's so unique in that it's one of the few places where you can walk down the street and hear Spanish, Mandarin, Swahili, German, Japanese, French, Portuguese, where the local farmers markets have actually changed what they've grown over the last 30 years, probably before I was here, in terms of serving the kinds of community that come here. It tells you something about the meaning of place. When I moved here in 1988, I spent at least 1 year living in Mill Street, which was in many ways sort of a training ground for young future members of UN. If you've ever spent any time out there right after like school's out and all the kids are goofing around, it's an amazing spot. Catherine referenced it as Global Village. So it's, I understand maybe Mill Street maybe needs a little renovation these days, but when I was there, it was a vibrant, wonderful place, and I imagine a lot of that vibrancy remains. So in any case, I say this just as sort of putting a framework around it, that we're here in this place having this conversation, and I think already the fact that the conversation is here says something about Athens, says something about the commitment of Ohio University. Second, take risks, or more simply, say yes to possibilities. During my grad school days here, a friend, fellow graduate student from Hawaii of Japanese descent, used to encourage me to, quote, follow the brush. By this, she was drawing on the ancient practice of Japanese calligraphy. And I understood it to mean to follow your passions, to follow your inspiration, to follow even sometimes those things that appear to be outside of what your actual plans are. In life, as we pursue our crafts, often with great planning, there are sometimes windows that open up, opportunities that we are not anticipating, and they present themselves. Small doors of possibility, just that are there for a moment. You have to be ready to engage those opportunities and walk through them, because they won't remain open for long. Looking back in my own journey involves a series of these little windows, of these little doors. I started during my undergraduate degree at Cleveland State University, where I would paint houses over the summer in Lakewood. So we'd get these giant houses, and we'd paint 2 or 3 of them in the summer, and we'd earn a lot of money. It's a lot of work, but we would sort of stand on these scaffoldings and sort of dream about what possibilities were. And my friend, the person I painted with, said one day, "Why don't we go to Mexico this summer? There's a great language program there." And I was a young man, and I had already decided I needed to go make a living. I needed to buy a car. I needed to do real things, right? Get my resume in order. And little did I know it, but this friend actually signed me up. He registered me in the program. So when December rolled around, it was getting cold, and of course we weren't painting houses, and I was disillusioned with my internship at the Cleveland Greater Growth Association, a job that didn't take me in the direction I anticipated. I said to him, "Boy, I wish I was going to Mexico with you." And he said, "Murph, you are. I signed you up. By the way, you have to pay the rest of the money, though." But, but it was a great starting point, because from there, I ended up going to Mérida, Mexico. And I met Dr. Tony Serna, who was at the time one of the main professors of Spanish here at Ohio University. And he invited me to come to Athens. He said, "Come down, check out Athens. You'll like it. We have great master's programs." So after we got back from Mexico, and after I moved back to Cleveland, I decided to come down to Athens, and I was introduced to Dr. Josep Rota. And he invited me to apply for the program. I applied for the program. I came to Athens, and my interest in scholarship, my interest in development, my interest in media, all of those things flourished within this space. At a time as well within our program where we had students all over the world. So I literally have a photograph of me seated at some point with my classmates, and I think there's not one of us from the same country. It was a special time. From there, I actually was offered a job back in Mexico, and I ended up taking a position at the Tecnológico de Monterrey in a town at the time of about 1 million called Querétaro. And that was a position that was opened up by another Ohio University colleague, someone I didn't know. Because I can remember it, I was sitting in my apartment on Court Street eating a bowl of Rice Krispies. And it was about 8 o'clock in the morning, and I got a call from this person. And that was about 2 weeks before I graduated from my master's program. And he says, "This is Patrick Murphy." And I said, "Yes, it is." He said, this is Luis Alvarado. I'm calling from Querétaro, Mexico. We have a positioning. We need someone who can teach video production for the summer. Would you like the position? And I said, "Yeah, it sounds great." I figured he's going to tell me 6 months. So we need you in 10 days. This is what I mean by windows. This is what I mean by openings. I looked around, and I said, "Yes, why not?" And from that, I deepened my interest in education. I deepened my interest in working in educational institutions, but I also had the intellectual curiosity to want to circle back for a doctoral program. And so at some point, I made the decision to come back to Ohio University and begin the doctoral program here, which in turn fed into, as Woody referenced, the Fulbright, which in turn rolled into a position in Illinois and beginning things like the Global Fusion Conference, a consortium of universities that's specifically dedicated to questions of media, communication, and globalization, with members of Virginia, University of Virginia, Texas, Austin, Texas A&M, Temple University, Southern Illinois, and of course, Ohio University. And it's one of the great conferences where scholars who are well-known internationally interact with graduate students in a way that I've seen no other conference do. It's a real wonderful experience, and we've now been doing it for 17 years. And it's allowed me also to move to Temple University to take my current position, at which place I created a development communication program, a problem-solving kind of a program that we need, an important program. So I just share these stories to say, follow the brush. You don't know when things might open up. Take those windows. Take those chances. Third, travel. Most of you probably do this already. And travel with curiosity. Last night's speaker, Eric Weiner, talked about seeking out thin places that inspire, and giving yourself time to, as he said, to loiter, to stick around, to kind of figure out if some place is boring, that it's really not boring. It has texture, it has meaning, it has something interesting to offer, that it can inspire. But I would add, know when to put your cell phone and headset aside. Today's personal technology is empowering, but I also think it makes the world smaller and more manageable. Not only can you bring your culture with you in the form of songs, videos, and books, you can connect to home through cell plans, international cell plans, Skype and email. But you can almost, anyway, travel anywhere and let various apps do the work for you. How to haggle in a Marrakesh market, where's the best soba in Kyoto, how to ride the metro in Mexico City. There's no doubt that these services make travel easier and even seamless by connecting you with what you're looking for and by keeping you connected to those at home. But in the process, do they do too much of the cultural work? That is, do you have to do any translation? Indeed, do they insulate travelers from the real textures of culture during the quest for authentic cultural experience? During the winter of 2016, I taught at sea as part of the University of Virginia's semester at sea program. I sailed with 400 students for almost 4 months, going to Mexico, Hawaii, Japan, China, Vietnam, Myanmar, India, Mauritius, South Africa, Ghana, Morocco, and England, through the Pacific, Indian, Atlantic Oceans. I can tell you that the students who unplugged from their mobile devices and leaned into their cultural explorations learned a lot more about the world and themselves than those whose main objective seemed to be to collect selfies in iconic places. In short, don't let your tech get in the way of your journey. Fourth, pick a profession that makes the world better. Be a problem solver. The world is a big and beautiful place, but it's becoming smaller and our planet is in trouble. After years of warning, many climate change scientists now argue that we can no longer just try to mitigate the earth-warming force of anthropogenic climate change by simply adjusting our industrial practices, consumer urges, or other environmentally unfriendly practices. Rather, the chore for humankind now is how to learn to adapt our lifeways to survival on a less hospitable planet. Indeed, the Union for Concerned Scientists asserts that some of the consequences of climate change are already here, coming in the form of more frequent and intense heat waves, accelerated sea level rise, heavier precipitation and flooding, an increase in extreme weather events, longer and more damaging wildfire, mass extinction, invasive species, and the exponential growth of public health issues. Not everyone will encounter these consequences with the same intensity or frequency, as the impact of climate change will be uneven. Not surprisingly, effects will be experienced most profoundly in the riskscapes of the developing world. High-density cities with poor infrastructure, low-lying zones susceptible to flooding or rising seas, dry places already vulnerable to drought. Within these challenging conditions, and with a looming prospect that the global population will likely reach over 9 billion by 2040, climate change must be understood as the challenge of the 21st century, because its most unforgiving practices will be defined in no small way through other global challenges, such as poverty, resource scarcity, food security, migration, armed conflict, and public health. This means the planet needs more problem solvers, people dedicated to using their skills and creativity to come up with innovative ideas to face its many challenges. This sounds heavy, but the world is in peril and we need to rise to the challenge and inspire others to do so through our example. And just not to end on like a really heavy note. Fifth, a final piece of advice: don't forget your own humanity. That is, while on this journey, this international journey, this professional global journey, to paraphrase one of my favorite writers, eco-warrior Edward Abbey, it is not enough to fight for the world. It is even more important to enjoy it while you can, while it's still whole. So get out there and mess around with your friends. Ramble out yonder and explore. Breathe deep that yet sweet and lucid air. Sit quietly for a while and contemplate the precious stillness, the lovely, mysterious, and awesome space that is our world. Thank you.
Okay, thanks a lot, Patrick. And I think we're going to bring all the panelists up now. Is that right? We could do that. Maybe, aside from Patrick, you could each give a bit of an introduction about what you're doing now in your professional life, and draw upon any relevant types of thoughts or ideas in relation to this panel. I'll quickly and very briefly introduce each of the panelists. Next to Patrick is Anastasia Karpakina. I think, hopefully I got that right. I worked on it a little bit, but didn't even know if I was working on it right. She is the Disaster Program Manager at American Red Cross in Connecticut, and is a recent graduate of a Center for International Studies Master's Program, the International Development Studies Program. So I believe you graduated just last year, or? Okay, so she's someone that has recently entered the professional job market, or at least has recently earned her degree and is now working professionally. And we have next to her Lance Healy, who graduated from Ohio University, I think in the mid-1990s, with an undergraduate degree and a focus on African studies and French. He is the Chief Innovation Officer and founder, I believe, of Banyan Technology, a logistics solution company. So as I suggested, we have a real diversity of professionals here. And then I believe on the screen, I don't know if, or at least the audio coming from the screen, we have Mara Fulton, who has about 20 years of international development experience in an array of remarkable positions, and is currently the Peace Corps Country Director in Myanmar, and I believe is responsible for setting up the Peace Corps program there. She graduated with her master's degree in international development studies in the late 1990s, so again, a real diversity of backgrounds and timelines here in terms of graduation time and professional experience. So I'll leave it up to you now to give a little bit more background on yourselves, and I've been asked to make sure that you move that microphone around appropriately as needed.
Certainly. Good afternoon, everybody. You can call me Nastya. I am a recent graduate of the program, actually under Dr. Walter, and as Dr. Murphy was referring to the little connections that and little holes that really bring you together, my story is very much connected actually to some folks on the panel as well as the ones in the room. I am originally from Moscow, Russia, so I moved to the States when I was 13, which kind of solidified my love to travel. So my goal originally when I was in high school was to travel and get paid for it. So I decided to pursue Peace Corps. I got into the Peace Corps. I got the travel part, obviously without the paid part at all. And it's really where I found what I wanted to do. Peace Corps is, most importantly, a cultural exchange program where you connect with folks. And I really enjoyed getting to know other people and other cultures. And working with communities, so community-based development and community-based empowerment is what I'm still passionate about and what I was passionate when I was in school. My director at the time was Maura Fulton, who is also on the panel. She actually encouraged me to apply for the program for the Masters for International Development Studies because her director was also Dr. Walter, who was mine for the 2 years that I was here, which is how I ended up here and graduating. You know, how I got into the Red Cross, I don't know if it connects to the folks that are in the room. It does to me in a way. The follow the brushstroke is very important. When I was here, the program is absolutely wonderful, but what I realized is I wanted to focus on emergency preparedness and disaster response in the development field. We do not have the concentration here, so I really had to think outside of the box of how I could get that experience. Internationally, it's very hard to get as far as unpaid positions are open, but paid ones, if you actually want to make money, they're not. I was an AmeriCorps member for a while with the Red Cross with disaster cycle services, so it came back to mind and I applied to about 50 positions, which is how I ended up in Connecticut. But what I realized is the experience, while I have the education and I have the international part, I can get the experience here in the States. And it's really thinking about, you know, as far as takeaways and lessons learned is having patience. I do love my job. It is challenging, but it is very important. It is very much community focused. The volunteers that I work with are the advocates. They're also the ones that promote community preparedness. So it is still grassroots based because I cover 43 towns in Connecticut and the majority of my workforce outside of me are volunteers. So it is very much still community based. And having the patience to be able to wait for those opportunities and really develop yourself. Ask, what are you good at? I'm very good at, well, talking sometimes, but also at community-based. That's where my passion is. You know, community partnerships, community-facing events, development, and really human connections. And volunteer management is what I do the most. So I'm developing that skill further, along with the ability to deploy to national disasters such as Harvey. I was in Texas in September. I know Harvey. To be able to get the experience that I need to take this pony show internationally. But I do need the time to be able to develop those. So patience is important. I see jobs and I really think I kind of want to try, but at the same time grounding myself because I do need to be in the position long enough to get the experience that I need and move on. Thank you.
Hey everybody, thanks for coming and thanks for letting me crash your party. My name's Lance Healy. I got started from a very small town in Northwest Ohio and ended up being a Rotary Exchange student in Belgium for a year when I was in high school. And that it was as the Berlin Wall was coming down and we saw Pink Floyd on the wall, and it was pretty awesome. And that really got me started on the international bug and travel and just open to anything and everything I could do to go experience as much of the world as we could. Did a lot of research, found out Ohio University had one of the best programs in the country back in the early 90s. It still does, of course. I just don't know the rankings now. But started as European studies and then quickly fell in love with the more classes I took on Africa and culture, and I just changed my area of focus. And the whole idea was that I met people in my travels that were doing international business, and right out of school they were getting paid hundreds of thousands of dollars a year, and I was like, man, I want to do that. That sounds awesome. And researched it and had everything planned to go to Thunderbird International Business Management School out in New Mexico. They said, yeah, no, go to OU. It's a great undergrad program. We'll teach you the business when you get here. Don't worry about it. And then doors opened, doors closed. A door opened my freshman year to make fake IDs, and then several doors closed after that. So a little felony conviction, kicked out for a year, no problem. Came back, ran the Entrepreneurs Club. And we had about 7 different businesses here at OU. And one of them, we actually, well, that also got shut down by the city. But the we were actually coordinating all the international students, and we created a consignment shop up on Court Street called Continental Drifters. And so we could bring in dorm tchotchke from all over the world on consignment because we didn't want to pay for any of it. But they said we were competing with local merchants, so they shut us down because we were just a club. So anyway, but moving on, we got the entrepreneur bug, and but I really just had a passion for international, and I still wanted to see what we could do there. So I ended up graduating and bartending. But during the day, we started kind of a new product development company. I moved up to the big city in Cleveland and ended up introducing some products from Norway and Iceland, which the French and Swahili helped terrifically with. And then had some manufacturing set up in Canada. And at 23, while still bartending, was importing products in and then distributing throughout the U.S. Until my supplier developed a little bit of a cocaine problem. And then I was out of business. Okay, so back to the drawing board, back to bartending, got my fallback. And then really started getting into focus on construction materials, which is what we're importing from the U.S. and Canada, and then that developed into, in the late 90s, an online materials exchange for construction materials called constructionbrokers.com, because that was cool back then, and then that gave rise to a need for some freight and logistics solutions, which then created Banyan Technology, which was some logistics software that helped folks move their materials online back when doing business online was very scary. And so we now have folks that use our applications in over 23 countries, about 30,000 folks here in the U.S., and about 53 employees up in Cleveland, and it's keeping me out of trouble. So happy to report. We did a stint in volunteer work with the State Department in North Africa as a translator in Senegal, Mali, Burkina Faso, Niger, and Chad in 2010. And that was phenomenal, and it was an option of really just following the brush. The University of Findlay needed someone that had a background in entrepreneurship, African studies, or some knowledge of Africa, and was fluent in French, and that narrowed it down to me out of a city of 60,000. So was able to go and work and then set up some scholarship programs. Well, there was a team that came after us. We were the ones that were in charge of finding safe hotels and sometimes we didn't. So that was a great opportunity, and just by saying yes, why not go for it? Thanks.
Do you need the microphone?
Mara? You
Yeah,
there?
I am.
Do you want to give a little bit of background on yourself now?
Sure. Mingalaba from Myanmar. I am about 8,500 miles and 10 and a half time zones away, so it's after midnight here. But thank you so much for including me in today's event. Unfortunately, there's a cyclone in the Indian Ocean that's impacting us with very heavy rain, and that slows down our already terrible internet. So I'm sorry, I'm just a voice and a photo piping in. It's an honor to join the other panel members, especially Nastya, Gamar Joba Nastya. And to the students, faculty, and others in the room, I envy the rich learning environment in which you're immersed at OU. It was such a fantastic experience for me. My Irish mother emigrated from Ireland as a teenager. She went from Dublin to New York City in 1955 by herself. She got an office job while earning her GED at a Brooklyn high school at night and devoted time to volunteer to welcome other new immigrants landing at New York Harbor. And she has some great stories of helping people like her find their way in their adopted communities. And so I guess you could say that crossing new waters and seeking new ways to be of service is sort of in my DNA. I learned from her independence, resourcefulness, curiosity, and grit. And I think that's brought me to some really incredible leadership positions in international development, and always stretching beyond my comfort zone. I know that for some people, a professional career is a destination. You might have in mind a specific position or a company or some other level of achievement. And for others, it's more of a journey that allows you to contribute from a variety of different positions, organizations, geographic areas. And I suppose my career would fit this description. And I'm lucky that that journey has involved increasing levels of responsibility. And like many of us returned Peace Corps volunteers, it started with my Peace Corps volunteer service. I served on a tiny, remote, traditional, topless outer island in Micronesia. It was very life-changing, and I knew after that I wanted to get a degree in international development. So on my tiny island in my hammock, I pored over the advertisements in the back of a National Peace Corps Association publication and was drawn back to the IDS program repeatedly, and was thrilled that Dr. Walter offered me a place in the program, and he has been just a steadfast mentor and champion. I think professional journeys can not always be smooth or comfortable. And I think the best you can be is enthusiastically open to engaging in new and uncertain experiences, to recognize your own potential and the potential opportunities ahead of you. And if you do that, you can manifest some pretty cool things. And I'll share a couple of those with you. I'd say be open to new opportunities, or as Dr. Murphy shared, say yes to those opportunities, even if it's not the perfect place with the best salary. The most important thing is the passion for the work. So after completing my MA at OU, I took a job in DC at the Academy for Educational Development for pennies, I might add, but it was a great job. And soon thereafter, I was looking for entry-level jobs overseas, which are few and far between, and had applied to the International Rescue Committee in Kenya. I never did hear back on that, but I got a call from them later for a job in the country of Georgia, managing a community development program in a conflicted area within a 12-kilometer buffer zone near a breakaway republic. It was risky. It paid $29,000 a year, and it was in a country I knew nothing about at a precarious time in its newly independent state with a questionable security environment. But the job description was perfect, and these management job opportunities overseas are rare for that level. So I said yes. and it was hard. But at 30 years old, I was managing several small but important community development grants and 25 staff across 4 field offices. And in Georgia, I've never felt so immediately embraced by people, and I really came to love the culture. So much so that I ended up working in Georgia 2 different times, one single and then one married, for over 5 years with the IRC and then Peace Corps. And in between those 2 stints, I got so attached to this little post-Soviet country that I convinced my husband to elope there, and we were married in a pink wedding palace in the heart of wine region. So be open to new opportunities. And be open to new opportunities even if you can't be sure exactly what you're walking into or what turns they might take. The important thing is the passion for the work. So that's a story sort of at the beginning of my professional career. And then I'll tell you a bit about where I am today. Startup endeavors are really, really challenging, but I've been involved in several. I was part of the team that started the Peace Corps program in Georgia back in 2000, 2001, and then went back to Georgia as country director. And in 2015, I was asked by Peace Corps to leave my comfortable country director position, which I loved, to open a brand new program here in Myanmar. This was before the 2015 election, and this emerging democracy was, and still is, heavily influenced by more than 5 decades of military junta rule. We could get absolutely nothing done. Despite the fact that the US and Myanmar has a bilateral agreement and we were invited to establish a program, the government was skeptical at best and a complete obstruction at worst. Myanmar ranks 171 out of 190 countries on the World Bank's Ease of Doing Business scale. Infrastructure is weak, the education system is broken, and the capacity of local staff is low. And all signs pointed to the impossibility of the task of building relationships and launching this program. And there was no way for me to prepare for how challenging this context would be. But I learned how to lean instead of push. Our cautious optimism became more enthusiastic. I drank a lot of tea with a lot of government officials. And after the NLD won the election, things started to change, and quite drastically, actually. Our patience paid off, and now I'm proud to say we have our first full group of Peace Corps volunteers in service in an English education project. They're so warmly welcomed and loved and embraced by their communities, and they are doing really, really great work. But I never could have imagined 2 years ago that we would actually be operational. Never have I been more challenged or more weathered by an experience, but I'm also humbled and pretty elated that we're able to launch the program, and we're here serving the people of Myanmar. There's a lot of things going on around us, as I'm sure you are well aware. I won't talk about that, but I'll just stop there and look forward to any questions if there are any at the end. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. So now we open up to questions from the audience. Any sort of general questions would be helpful or useful. You don't want me asking questions because who knows what I'll ask. Anybody? Yeah, okay, great.
Hi, thank you. Hi, everyone. Thanks for sharing with us all of your experience. I'd like to ask Anastasia, what is a regular day description of your, duties or job? What is it like? What exactly do you do?
Okay. I'm going to attempt. My days do vary depending on what is going on. A big part of what I do is volunteer management and volunteer relation building and mentorship. But I'm also the face of the Red Cross, so I have meetings with local emergency planning committees, fire chiefs, emergency management directorate, first selectmen, and mayors to talk about their emergency preparedness and if they have any sheltering needs or questions. I don't know if you're aware, but the Red Cross, the biggest disaster that we respond to are house fires. It's about 80% of what we respond to. And we have a disaster action team that if there is a house fire and assistance is needed, that we dispatch. So I do a lot of management, with those. And there's 7 people that die every day from a house fire at least. So we are very busy, and it keeps us busy. But the assistance that we provide is based on our community relationships, because we do community outreach and casework with the victims of fires and provide small financial assistance for emergency assistance so they can figure out what their next steps are. I guess another way of saying, for example, yesterday, so I got here to you all just at 11 o'clock. I left my house at 1 a.m. This morning. The reason why I wasn't here yesterday is because one of the things that I do are volunteer meetings. And we had one last night, which is a very usual one. With Hurricane Harvey, we've had such a response of new folks flooding in that we had an activity fair where we explored the different possibilities of how they can volunteer. So I have about 150 volunteers that I manage along with the leadership team that is full of volunteers for me. Hope that helps.
Yeah, and maybe at some point you could all elaborate on the intensity of your work lives, and how much that intensity and hard work at various times has contributed to your successes.
Thank you. I am Abubakar Siddiq Sise in the Communication and Development Studies program. However, colleagues and friends normally call me Siddiq, just like Professor Murphy. My question is, Dr. Murphy and Maura, you spoke extensively about this aspect that has to do with passion, which I believe is very much important. But I'm really concerned of the fact that these days in the field of academia, passion is being shifted, is being relegated, to the point that instead of people going for what they have passion in doing, they go for where they will earn much more money. So I am a bit concerned in this era of 21st century. What exactly could you say about this? When passion is shifted to the acquisition of more money. Because I'm concerned if we are relegating passion to the back post, to the back door, then a lot of other global issues that warrant the attention of people will be just there. So what do you have to say? Thank you.
Excuse me, Mara, would you like to take a stab at this first, or would you like me to begin?
I think I'll let you. I don't think I can speak to passion in academia, but
Okay.
I'll let you handle that one.
Well, part of my role I guess probably over the last 15 years, is I've become an administrator. So I can honestly say that administration was something I was never passionate about, nor am I today. But that said, I think there are times when you have to recognize that if you have a particular skill set, and if you realize that you can push, and again, I'm talking about within an academic context, the conversation about particular ideas and particular issues in directions that are meaningful, then you have a responsibility to do that. And so one of the things I've tried to use through my positions as department chair and now as Associate Dean for Research and Graduate Studies is to internationalize the curriculum, which is an area that I am passionate about. And that means both in terms of ingraining it across the curriculum within our undergraduate programs, but it also means in reference to the creation of new programs at the graduate level. And within the city of Philadelphia, it's a city that has a lot of texture, that has a lot of diversity. And with that has a lot of problems. And like many institutions, and I think this was referenced several times throughout the last couple of days, what is the responsibility of public education, the kinds of institutions that personally I'm drawn to and find value in? in terms of serving the communities. And in the case of Temple University, we want to be able to use our programs as a means through which that the communities benefit as well. And so this is an area where I guess I could say my administrative hat meets my intellectual interests and the way in which those dovetail into trying to make a difference. And so our development communication program, while it certainly allows for people to do things in faraway places, it's also working right in the communities. So the idea being that, yes, you're correct, that sometimes money does lead things. And even we're feeling it in all of our public education institutions where we're operating under these different kinds of economic models that really privilege the way in which you head count. But I think a good administrator, or at least an administrator who is interested in trying to use his or her position to make a difference, realizes there's ways in which you can do that and create content, create curriculum that actually allows for people that want to make a difference. And we've done that. We're going to continue to do it. And so I guess the broader response would be is whatever pressures that you have in your life, most people need to make a living. They have, they don't have a way to fall back on trust funds or whatever, right? So they have to make decisions about making a living, but there's ways in which you can do that where you can follow your passions and have a meaningful existence as well. So that would be my response.
Mara, do you want to respond?
Yeah, I think, sure. I think it's a bit different for me. I work for a federal government agency that is very much mission-driven. Peace Corps' mission has remained exactly the same since John F. Kennedy set it up in 1961, and that is essentially world peace and friendship. So pretty cool to work for an organization whose mission is world peace and friendship. It is absolutely attracts volunteers and staff who are motivated by that mission and really driven to make great contributions in the field of community development and cross-cultural exchange, building bridges of friendship and connecting people to each other. I think the pressures that I feel are not so much sort of chasing after money. We're not a for-profit, and we don't need to do that. It's quite the opposite. It's dealing with decreasing budgets, not getting the kind of allocation that we would like from the White House or Congress. So it's how to keep that passion alive with dwindling budgets, dwindling resources, and in the case of Myanmar, a particularly vexing environment. But essentially, I would say with Peace Corps, at least for me, it's pretty easy to keep the passion alive because it's such a mission-driven agency.
Okay, thanks.
Hi, it's LJ here. I think this actually is a really good question. And I want to make an observation from the Center for International Studies perspective because I think it speaks to our team in the center. We are always revisiting, what's important to the Center for International Studies, and compassion was actually one of the 5 sort of deliverables and the kinds of global leaders that we want to graduate here at Ohio University. We mentioned, of course, we want you to be confident, and of course, we want you to be competent. Of course, we want you to be connected, but we also want you to be cooperative and know how to work collectively with people in a meaningful way, and to do that in a way that your compassion thrives, no matter what field you endeavor to take. And I think you've kind of hit the nail on the head because like all institutions, we are always struggling with balancing our resources. But we came together as a group and reinforced that no matter what choices we're going to make moving forward, they are going to be mission-driven because a university is about having a vision for producing new graduates who are going to make this world a better place and to be impactful with that agenda. And I wouldn't even mind Lance and Nastya also speaking to it, because I think when we heard you speak, we also hear that continuous passion, whether you're in academia or whether you're working in a country that has, significant challenges like the United States and Myanmar, or in the private sector, that passion is still coming through. So if you two could add to that, I really liked your question, and I hope that students at Ohio and within the Center for Internationals feels that imperative on our part to give you the opportunity to see your vision as a person of compassion in addition to everything else we strive to achieve.
Sure. Thanks, LJ. Yeah, passion, whether it's academia or anything, that's what, in my opinion, has to drive every day. It doesn't matter if it's, for us in our company, we've never been driven by dollars. It's about how do we make everyone's lives better. We happen to do it through technology. And that's what we love. When somebody's like, man, this is so awesome. It's just saved me so much time. It's just saved our company so much money. That's a victory. And that's really a major driver. But it's be passionate, and whatever you set your mind to, whatever you want to do, just never, 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 never quit. Everyone's capable. You can do things beyond your wildest dreams. Just do it. Just go and do it. And be passionate about it. And you'll get all kinds of roadblocks and 1,000 people to tell you why it's a bad idea, or why you can't do it or shouldn't do it, and you just tell them to screw off and go do it anyway. And really that's the passion and a fire, and if you've got it, you'll get it.
Well, like Maura, passion and mission-driven is not a problem for working for the American Red Cross. Our mission statement is to prevent and alleviate human suffering through the generosity of donors and volunteers. How can you not be passionate about that? Everything that we do is to help people. That's what we're chartered to do by the government. We are a nonprofit agency that is neutral. If there is an event, it does not matter who the person is, what they believe in, as long as it's peaceful and we can assist everyone equally, we will do so. That's why you will see photos of opposing parties, in international conflicts, and International Red Cross assisting both of those in the same ambulance, different fighters from different groups, because we are a neutral organization that provides assistance to all. So yes, I'm very passionate about the organization. However, I would also say passion is not the only thing that would necessarily be my driver or that I would consider. I really do believe that there should be a sweet middle where you can develop your skills and have a really evaluation of what do you think you're good at, and meet the passion, kind of have a meet together. It's not something that necessarily you are super passionate about. You still are passionate, but what are you also good at? Where can you be the most effective? Where can you learn? That's what I believe. Obviously, my mission for the organization that I work for is amazing, but I'm also there to learn and professionally grow. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Catherine Kutcher. I'm the Assistant Director for Global Studies in the Center, and Maura and I were classmates in the late 90s, so I'm very happy that Maura was able to join us on the panel today. Hi, Maura.
Hi, Kat.
How are you?
Great.
So I just have a question about Peace Corps, because Ohio University is a Peace Corps prep program. We have a partnership with the Peace Corps, and we've been really ramping up our efforts here to recruit potential Peace Corps volunteers, and I'm happy to report that our applications are significantly up. So I wanted to ask both Maura and Anastasia to think about what are the most important qualities or skills or characteristics of a potential Peace Corps volunteer, and is it grit, or what is it that makes it possible for people to complete 2 years of service in really sometimes very challenging environments? And maybe also a question for the whole panel, what are the most transferable skills that you gained from your international education here at Ohio University, and how do you, or what kind of advice would you give to students in this audience to market themselves in a very competitive job market today? What are the skills that you particularly got out of your program here? Thank you.
Go ahead, Nastia. I'll follow you.
I thought you would say that. Okay. Well, as a recent returned Peace Corps volunteer, I served in the Republic of Georgia from 2012 to 2014. 1 year under more, my last one. And it really makes, it takes all kinds to make the world go round in terms of volunteers. The one thing that you do see is I think with Peace Corps, and that's an amazing thing, is the amount of growth that you do as an individual while you're there, to work with people with community-based development and work with them and help. You end up helping and growing so much more, I feel like, that I have gotten so much more out of it than my country host program. But it is a passion, and it's also the curiosity, I think, that is a really big driver, is being willing to be open to exploring other cultures and living in people's homes and trying the food that you have no idea what you're eating, and that's okay. You may like it, you may not. It's that child's curiosity and having an open mind and being flexible and working in situations that may be difficult and being adaptive. I think that's it, Laura.
And I totally agree with that. I think we overuse the big F word in Peace Corps, and that's flexibility. But all of what you said is true. I think also it's important to me that volunteers either come into service or discover through training what their why is. So understanding their why are they there? Because not all Peace Corps volunteers, I think, have the right notion of what Peace Corps service is, or the right reasons for being there. And again, the 3 goals have not changed since 1961. They're to provide technical assistance to countries who request it, to share American culture with their local community members, and to share that local culture back with the Americans. But I see nowadays, and I served at a time, I was a pre-email, pre-Skype, pre-cell phone, pre-internet volunteer. And it was much easier for me, I think, to immerse myself. And Dr. Murphy was talking about, technology and how easy we can get lost in that. And there's good and bad uses of technology in Peace Corps now, but without it, I was absolutely fully immersed. So I think the most successful volunteers now are those who understand their why. They can immerse themselves and be fully present and walk alongside and work shoulder to shoulder with the communities that have so graciously opened their hearts and their homes to them. I think it's important to be positive, to focus on assets and not on problems, to have that really, the strength-based approach to development. We talk a lot now about resiliency, and a little bit of that is grit, but it's really the ability to bounce back from challenges and adversity, and there are plenty in Peace Corps. There are lots of ups and downs in the volunteer sort of cycle of cultural adjustment. But to be able to be resilient, sort of take the small failures and challenges and obstacles and really sort of bounce back from them. And then the last thing I would say is it's much more important nowadays, and especially for me, that a volunteer is able to look at this experience as a job, because it's still the toughest job you'll ever love. And I want volunteers who are able to look at this as a professional opportunity. And now more and more our host communities expect that of the volunteers too. This is not a tourist vacation or a two-year, journey in a place they always wanted to visit. They need to be professional and really take the job seriously.
And then just to represent from the skill set and retention from, and just from a private business sector perspective, we've got interns that we bring in every year from Holland, from Guatemala, and they're amazing, and it also exposes the rest of our staff to kind of the idea of with cultural exchange. Still passionate about that. I know if anyone's traveled abroad, and just from a hiring perspective, if I see that they've spent time abroad and that's on a resume, aside from my obvious bias, but that's a huge, I know that, hey, here's somebody that's extremely adaptable. They're willing to take a risk. If they've spent any sizable time, whether it's Peace Corps experience, whether it's time abroad in other programs, more than a semester or a week's tour of Paris, doesn't count. But they've got that wherewithal that they can learn how to interact and work in a team setting because they know it's not wrong, it's just different, and really can adapt well. So it's a huge win in my book from a hiring perspective.
Suppose the skill sets that I would suggest are pretty predictable. Learn how to write. Learn how to write well. You can use that in pretty much any job. If you don't speak a second language, start tomorrow. Even if you don't get as far along as you hope, excuse me, I think it is really useful not only in terms of communicating with other people, but also just giving you sometimes a sense of how people think and how they think differently. And I sound like an academic saying this, but I am. Research. Research isn't just for being in college. Learn how to do research and apply research to whatever you're doing, whether it's the job you have or it's the job you want. Don't show up to an interview waiting for them just to ask you questions and learn how wonderful you are. Show up with your own questions to ask them. You're interviewing them too. So these are things I think that are really useful in terms of just how you think about, if you want to pursue this theme we're talking about, the global professional. That along with the things that have been mentioned, being flexible, being curious, being tenacious, and I think those are all qualities that, and that idea too, just having on your resume you've done something else, I think is really attractive to a lot of potential employers. So.
Okay, you have another question? Okay, here you go.
I don't know if Nastya, you're going to also make a comment, but it just strikes me that there are many paths to enlightenment. And whether you're now working in the private sector or you're working in development questions, whether it's the United States or internationally, or whether you're working in academia, I think this has been another really good forum that has just reinforced the value of the undergraduate and graduate programs at Ohio University through the Center for International Studies, because there's this common sort of ingredient in terms of how your international studies has influenced and shaped the nature of the jobs that you're now contributing to in society today. And I was just reminded of that, and I just wanted to highlight that distinctiveness, because this has been another very impactful forum, I think, to showcase that value. Thank you.
Okay. Maybe we can take one last question, and then we'll wrap it up.
Hey there. So I just wanted to thank all of you for your advice and insight off the bat. My name is Seth Baker. I'm a second year in the IDS program right now, and I think I can speak on behalf of a couple of us second years that are here. I don't know if this has an exact answer, but with all of us about a semester away from graduating, where do you look? What is kind of the process to get out there? I mean, all of us, we'll have our CVs and resumes ready, we'll have practice interviews, but how do you kind of put yourself out there? Because after having 5, 6, 7 years in higher education, the career field, becomes more and more daunting. So how do you kind of make that jump and bridge the gap between your experience with higher education and going out into, the quote-unquote real world?
Okay. Thanks, Seth. That is a good question. That's something that I was asking myself 2 years ago as well. And it's honestly, for me, I keep referring back to it, but it's really asking myself, what am I good at, and what other outside possibilities are there? DC networking events, asking recruiters for interviews to see how you can better improve and be able to what they're looking for organizationally is wonderful. But there are so many other opportunities that are just not standard that I think are very, very well worth examining. And don't be afraid to look at a non-travel job for now. Does it fit the skills that you're looking to develop? Is that the 1 or 2 steps that you really need to get better, to be noticed more? It is a lot of self-evaluation. I still do that, quite frequently myself. It's the asking of, where have I looked and where haven't I looked, and why not? Is it because it's just not the usual way? Take the road less traveled. It's fine. It's working for me so far.
I'd throw out finding a career is a lot like dating, right? So you're going to kiss a lot of toads, do you want to work in a big company? Do you want to work with a small company? Is it a startup? Is it academic? Is it volunteer? There's probably a mix of that, and until you kind of go and get some ideas and experience in that, it's tough. I've got a thing against big companies. It's a trap. But if you find what you like to do, and it's not even a particular industry, but a type of environment you want to work in, you want to immerse yourself in, you're going to be there for longer than you're going to see your spouse or girlfriend or whatever. So like where you are, love what you do, even if you don't right away. Recognize if you don't right away, don't buy the car, don't buy the house, don't get weighed down with a lot of assets and baubles that now you're trapped by your own habits. But just stay nimble, especially for the first several years. Figure it out. And then don't be overly confident. So if you look at a company and it's like, man, you know what, that would be really cool to go work there, cyberstalk the CEO and find out what he likes doing. Shoot him a handwritten letter. Do something nonconformist. If you throw in your resume in the grist mill, then you're in the herd, right? It's a lot harder to get noticed. So do something different. Just walk up, meet him, say, I'd love to have lunch, and there's an advantage of being a recent student. You can still do it as Patrick said, it's a research project. And say, hey, I'd love to interview your company for a paper I'm working on. He doesn't know you're not turning it in anywhere, right? But you get to know the company, and basically all of you have your own political capital of yourself. You have what you put out there and what people see of you. That's the strongest thing, and that's what's going to sell you a lot more than a resume. So get in front of people, because if you get a recommendation from somebody, oh yeah, you really should meet with this person, you're at the top of the pile. And so wherever you pursue it, those are just tactical techniques, but do something different.
Well, I'd say ask Lance for a job. I think the job market's really more competitive now than it's ever been, and so it's difficult to easily just have a job waiting for you. And I think more and more, what students need to do is treat their education already as if they're sort of in their job search. And so the obvious things are things like internships and so forth. But I would say also, really, when you have a project for your class, whatever class that is, make that a project that you want to show off later and actually becomes part of your portfolio. So when you're doing that job search, don't treat those in a cavalier fashion and don't toss them to the side after you're done with them. Hang on to them and put together something that you really feel proud about, interested in, so that others as well will be interested in it. Because that will separate you from the pack. I think there are a lot of ways in which you will have to probably do things in terms of getting noticed that's different. Submitting a resume today to get a job is just this horrendous process because it's all computerized and it's so impersonal that you don't even get the satisfaction of putting in the mail anymore. There's this sort of, most of these jobs now have forms that you fill out and don't allow you to put any sort of sense of yourself into them. So what you have to do is find other ways in which you can do that. And you might find that those are different for a lot of different cases. But if you can sort of get a running start now and treat your education as you're already in that process, I think that's a really helpful way to get started. I have 3 daughters. One right now is she's a sophomore, and we have this conversation all the time. And she really is constantly looking for ways in which she can use her free time. Last summer she did an internship at the Mexican consulate. And it was a really interesting, eye-opening experience for her. And so these kinds of things, just looking for ways in which you can sort of insert yourself into things, and I think it's helpful.
Mara, do you want the last word, or we can wrap things up? Okay.
Yeah, just a couple things I would add. Use your networks. Find a mentor. Connect with people. And I don't mean use your networks in sort of the shallow way we sometimes think of networking, but really think about professors who you respect and like, who might have connections in the field. Dr. Walter helped to open doors for me, and the Return Peace Corps volunteer community has also been fabulous. Use your networks, build intentional relationships, ask for informational interviews, treat people to coffee. If you don't have a LinkedIn profile yet, create one, and create a really dynamic, professional, complete, comprehensive, fabulous LinkedIn profile. As a hiring manager, the first thing I will do is a Google search and try to find somebody on LinkedIn. What I don't like is when people sort of do it, halfway and don't really take the time to make a comprehensive online resume. So pay attention to LinkedIn and make it really dynamic. And then I would also say, once you get your foot in the door, I totally agree with Dr. Murphy in talking about how important writing is. That's the one skill that I always look for, and I'm constantly surprised at the level of writing skills that I get in applicants. So focus on your writing and professional writing. And once you get an interview or that informational interview or some kind of foot in the door, really focus on what you can do for that organization or that company, not what they can do for you. Demonstrate what kind of value added you would bring and how you would contribute.
Okay, listen to that echo. So we have parting gifts for all of our panelists, and why don't we give them a round of applause now, and then after they get the gifts. We're going to send something to you tomorrow, Mara, but this is for Lance.
There you go. Thank you.
This for you. Thank you. Okay, thank you very much.
So big.
And I get to also give a small token of our appreciation to Woody. So thank you again, Woody, for moderating today's session.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much.